Right, hello. Hopefully I'm live. I've got my better camera on, as you can probably see, because you can see every little bit of sort of stubble on my face where I need to have a shave. I need to actually probably shave all my hair off. I'll probably do that tomorrow evening. So if I'm not on tomorrow evening for a stream, that'll be why. Because, yeah, you can see with my receding hairline a bit there. And obviously quite thick hair on the rest of my head, but the problem is obviously it's receding a bit at the front and it gets in the way of gas masks and things like that. So I find being bald is generally better, because if my head gets cold, I could just put a cold weather cap on. All right, Rich. So I hope you're all right. So I thought today we'd just mostly do a politics stream and talk about Kier Starmer, the wanker, and all that, because hopefully he'll be gone very soon. I think his own party is now trying to get rid of him properly, rather than it just being a few MPs that might be plotting against him. I think they are really trying to oust him now. And, like I said, I fucking despise the man. So not going to hold any, fake things there. Because his latest thing is Starmer blames security service for Mandelson vetting fiasco. So, yeah, basically, the security services said to Starmer, don't hire Mandelson. He's got all these skeletons in his closet. There's all these problems with him. Kier goes, oh, I know, Bash. Thank you for the advice. I'm not going to listen to you. Oh, Mandelson, did you do these bad things? And Mandelson said no. And he goes, okay, then you're hired. And then he carries on doing bad things. And then, oh, how could I have known? They didn't warn me properly. Oh, no. Yeah, like I said, he's fucking weasel, that man. So, yeah, there we go. So, I don't necessarily know if I want a defense against those, Rich. So something you might like, Rich, just while we're waiting for people to come on. Like I said, impulse buy after watching V for Vendetta. Not exactly the same, but like a sparring dagger, sort of, what's the proper term for these, like the defensive daggers? Parrying dagger? Yeah, parrying dagger. So like, the Windless Steelcraft Munich Town Watch one, this is called, but it was the closest one I could find to like a V for Vendetta style dagger, without like I can actually find. Yeah, parrying dagger, exactly. Because yeah, I rewatched V for Vendetta. His ones are a bit smaller than these, but they're still pretty damn big daggers in that film. I think they're a cut like about 3 inches shorter than this one. This one, let me look up the blade length of it again. It's still slightly shorter than my Enfield bayonet. So 1 second. This one is a blade of 33.5 centimeters, which is, if we go to inches. So I think the V for Vendetta one was about 9 or 10 inches, but I couldn't find any of those for sale that weren't like, low quality wall hanger / like cosplayer ones. All right, the only tire. So yeah, so like I said, this is like a very similar dagger design in terms of the forks on it and the pommel and everything. Slightly different wire wrapped handle and, like I said, longer blade, but otherwise pretty much the same thing. And I think it's very, very cool. I've done some videos on it, but they're scheduled, so they're not live yet. But yeah, very good point of balance on it as well. If I get my hand there, yeah, as you can see, point of balance is pretty much right where the cross guard is. So that's nice. It's actually very sharp. They did a good job on the sharpening service, although I think the sharp edge starts about there. So I think it's a bit of a false edge there. Then the sharp edge starts about there. Then it gets very, very sharp as you get to the tip. All right, Germany. I was talking about, this is a Munich Town Watch dagger, supposedly. It's a recreation one. But all right to you, Mark 1. So yeah, talking about Germany, Munich, München. Yeah. So like I said, this is designed apparently like you hold it in your left hand, you have a rapier in your right. I just like this on its own. Yeah, interesting, Kevin. Like we said, we've got an interesting day in politics at the moment. Now until Starmer is ousted by his own party, I think now. Not that he'll probably be replaced by somebody who's also awful, but I hate Kier Starmer so much. I am really, really hoping he goes in the most disgraced way possible. Because, yeah, basically he's all being linked into the Epstein stuff, not directly in the sense. Oh, yeah, he's a fifth rent boy now, isn't there, Rich? A fifth twink is somehow involved in that thing that happened with him. And like we said before, I do not care if we had a gay prime minister, but it's very strange when you've got one that's probably a closeted gay bloke that can then be blackmailed over it. you know, where lots of people think, you know, his wife and all the marriage is like one of those sham marriages, you know, like cover marriages. The word apparently is a beard for a wife that does that, or like, you know, a partner that does that. So, you know, so you can say, oh, I'm a straight man, I'm a normal family man, all that. Yeah, that's the exact one, Kevin. And now it's just another twink's been involved. So why do all these young sex worker men know where his private residences were, his private cars, all of this? Why do they all know? You know, and like I said, I wouldn't have a problem with a prime minister if he was gay. But it's just the fact this guy is obviously so fucking compromised himself. So yeah, we haven't had anything with Kier directly in the Epstein files. But what we have had, obviously, is Mandelson, who he appointed and was told not to, sold state secrets to Epstein, or was blackmailed into giving Epstein state secrets, committing treason and all this. And now, of course, Starmer is doing the fucking weasel thing he always does of, oh, I wasn't warned well enough. So yeah, every time Starmer's told not to do something by the people who actually know what they're doing, and he does it anyway, or doesn't do something when he's told to do something, you know, by advisors that know what they're fucking doing, he then blames them. Because, yeah, oh, I was told not to do something. I did it anyway, but it's the fault of the people that told me not to do it because they didn't tell me not to do it hard enough. Cheers, Anomaly Glitch. So, yeah, I was just saying this wasn't really related to the stream, but because I rewatched V for Vendetta recently, I had to buy, like, the kind of Renaissance-style parrying daggers, fork daggers. So, yeah, this is a few inches longer than the one V for Vendetta. The handle is a black handle on this one with the wire, sort of the spiral wire wrapping like V for Vendetta. But because I couldn't find any that weren't just like wall hangers that would fall apart if you ever used them for anything, this was the closest like properly made Renaissance style dagger I could find. So I've got some videos coming up on it. It's got a very nice point of balance. It's actually, the funny thing is, if we get the Lee Enfield bayonet out from 1907, it is still a shorter blade on this than the Enfield bayonet. The Enfield sword bayonet is still technically longer. So if you had, if you had this in one hand and the Enfield bayonet in the other, the Enfield bayonet is still longer than the parrying dagger. So, yeah, there you go. So to give you an idea of just how bloody long this bayonet is, what is literally to me a short sword is still shorter than this bayonet. And I think there were even some World War I sort of 1890s era bayonets that were even bigger than this one. Not sure if it was the Germans or whoever else, but yeah. So, and all right, Miss Kohan, yeah, I think both of these are very nice. But like I said, because I like V for Vendetta and I watched that recently, I was like, oh, I have to get a blade like that, even if it's going to hurt my wallet and my bank account. I was like, oh, I really love those kind of Renaissance daggers. I've not obviously practiced doing any throwing it at people yet. But yeah, V for Vendetta is a really good film. Like I said, although again, I'm sure that's a film that might put you on the terror watch list now in the UK, V for Vendetta, if you like it and enjoy it, especially the ending, because you know. What's my favorite camo pattern out of the ones I've got, or ones that just exist full stop? Because one of my favorite ones, but it's very, very expensive, is Finnish MO5, or whatever it's called, the current Finnish army one that they have a couple of variants of. It's kind of like a flecked arm, but different. That's really nice because it works really well in pictures. I've seen of it, you know, when soldiers are masking properly with it. I like CAD-PAT as well, and US MARPAT, like Marine Pattern or whatever it is. Pat you can sometimes get in the UK the real stuff. You can buy reproduction stuff, and CAD-PAT they just destroy because Canada doesn't actually surplus it. You know, doesn't like surplusing their stuff. So yeah, so but I like those as well. But yeah, out of all the camos at the moment in terms of effectiveness, Finnish MO5 is really nice, but I don't have any. Like I said, the MTP stuff I've just got because it's really cheapo. You know, you can buy barely used British Army surplus of it for like, you know, £10 over here or whatever. And this is a really good jacket because again, it's one with loads of pockets. It's a bit like an M65, this jacket, like a modernized M65. Doesn't have a liner in, but you know, is lightweight, good to see pockets. It's got a wire hood in there if you you know, want to adjust the hood for different shapes. That's the thing they've done with British ones for ages. You've got the wire shaped hood, so you know you can have the hood shaped how you want it. So you could do a Klansman kind of hood with it if you wanted. But yeah, like I said, the reason I like these British Army ones is just because they're cheap. So I've got one of these in 95 DPM as well from ages ago. Anyway, going back to what Rich was saying, one of them was 19, but yeah, I heard about this. Somebody was saying this in the comments, weren't they? But the property that they did the arson on, Starmer hasn't lived in for 5 years, which would have made the boy 14 if he was in that property or taken to that property, which meant that if Kier was doing something with him, then he would have been underage. Yes. If you're on about this one, Pepe, this is a World War One bayonet. The World War Two bayonets are generally the spike ones. It depends. Again, as much as this is a politics stream, I don't mind talking about other stuff. So yeah, just to show you, I'm just trying to be careful because I'm using that camera that I don't knock the wire and then fuck it up. If you mean why do a lot of countries do bayonets like this, the pig sticker ones, it's literally because they were cheap to make. I'm just going to see if I can get the camera to focus on that. Sometimes it likes to focus on things like that. Sometimes it doesn't. Still trying to focus on my face, I think. But with these pig sticker style bayonets, these just because it barely cost any metal to make them. And it's literally, yeah, Roanoke Charlie, yeah. I've got a katana. 1 second, I'll get it out. What kind of pipe is that? Are you smoking pipe? What are you looking at, Stoic Jedi? What pipe? If you mean that big pipe in the background, I'm not allowed to hold that up on the YouTube stream. That's a Strela too, but it would fall under their gun laws. Not gun laws, like their gun restrictions. Yeah, it's like a one-shot disposable man pad. It's been fired. It's missing bits of the trigger. Oh, right, the bayonet. Yeah, the pipe. The pipe is the that's just a little sheath for it that would have gone in your webbing. And yeah, that is like, yeah, literally the lug for it, because these are the cheap and nasty No. 4 bayonets. And yeah, for the person asking why, because they were cheaper to make, and around the time you no longer obviously had cavalry being used by militaries, you didn't need the giant long knife bayonets. Interesting thing, just to make a point, because some people don't know this. When a bayonet is this way round, technically, with the blade, you know, like one end that way, one that way, that's actually for horses, not for people, technically, because it's the way a horse's ribs are shaped. If you are actually bayoneting a person, you'd want the bayonet on the side like this to go through the ribs as cleanly. But I might do a quick video at some point on the evolution of bayonets. But yeah, in general, a lot of modern bayonets are more knife-like because they're designed to be more multi-tools. They're kind of like a bayonet as an extra function. You know, that there's bayonet lugs on a generic knife, like a multi-tool knife, like the USM9 bayonet. And a bit like the AKM bayonet and the British SA-80 bayonets are like that, with the wire cutters and everything. But yeah, in general, historically, bayonets were designed either for just being a cheap spike that went on the end of the gun to convert it into a spear, you know, anti-cavalry, anti-infantry spear, or like this is the last of the style of this, like with the British 1907 bayonets. But Britain had, as other people have mentioned, the cutlass bayonets and everything as well. And I've seen some other nations that had, like, you know, other various kind of sabery cutlass looking actual swords that had bayonet lugs on them, you know, so you could snap them to your rifle. So you could have it as a spear, but you could also fight with them one-handed. Yeah, that's why in a lot of bayonet drills, they do it sideways. If you've ever seen that, they do actually stab sideways, and that's why. But again, you're going to be pretty fucked if you're a person and somebody stabs you with the full force of a rifle with a blade like this anyway. But yeah, in terms of would I rather be stabbed by something like this or something like this, probably actually the big knife one, because these are going to fucking penetrate you horribly no matter the direction. I don't, they actually focused on it then, look for a second. But yeah, these kind of ones, this is coated in cosmoline, by the way. That's what the weird sheen is on it, the oily sheen, cosmoline. Yeah, these kind of bayonets, the triangular wounds are fucking horrible from old things like that. As the founding fathers intended in that copy pasta, if you've ever heard that one. We'll go on to Kier Starmer in a minute. Don't forget to like the stream. But yeah, we'll talk about Kier Starmer evidently, because that's probably why most people are coming on. So yeah, just to TLDR everybody that doesn't know about on this earlier. So and I've got my Free Speech Union pin on there. I thought I'd put that on here. I'm doing this because like I said, I joined the Free Speech Union a while ago in case I get arrested for naughty words. Just hold that up so you can actually see it. I guess it's the pen is mightier than the sword sort of thing with this. I can't actually quite read the text on there. It's a bit too small, but Yes, free speech union pin. So I guess it's like one of those things of somebody holding a gun up in their fist, but it's a pen or a pencil, because the censorship of speech over here. I reckon a lot of them are rotten, but yeah, just to fill everyone in, Stoic Jedi, for people that might join the stream and don't know all about this. So don't forget to like the stream, everybody. So Kier Starmer appointed a guy called Peter Mandelson to be his US ambassador, like when he got into power, basically. Or I think when Trump became the president, because he thought he'd be more appealing to Trump or something like that. And Mandelson had previously been fired from two governments, basically, for corruption when Labour was last in before 2010, 2011, whenever it was, under Blair and Brown. So basically, Mandelson had been fired twice. So, he was fired for some sort of corruption thing, rehired again a few years later, fired again because he kept doing corruption-style shit. Then, obviously, Labour wasn't in power. It was the Tories for the last 14 years, who were also awful. Like I said, I don't want to give them any excuses. But then, yeah, Kier put Mandelson back in a job, and they had security done on all these sort of people. Where the security services, all of like our glowies, look into people and dig up their dirt, so you know how compromised somebody might be and anything like that, which you want if you're hiring somebody, in a high rank position. The security services said to Starmer, "Don't hire this guy. He's a fucking liability." Like, he keeps getting done on loads and loads of corruption things because he's corrupt as fuck and he's friends with Epstein and all this. And Starmer went, "All right, thanks for that. I'm going to hire him anyway because I know best. I'm Kier Starmer. I'm big brain Starmer." So Starmer hires him. Everything again comes out about Mandelson, and he gets fired only because people find out. Because again, apparently Starmer knew all along, but because and this was more that when he was fired last year, that was because not that any of this recent stuff had come out, but it was because basically that when Mandelson said, "Oh, I broke off my friendship with Epstein the first time he got done for child prostitution," like lots of celebrities claimed, but again, like all of them, he was still friends with him, still going to his parties and stuff like that when he got out of prison the first time. So that's why he was fired the first time around, Mandelson, in this current government, or why he was officially fired. But then it turns out, in the Epstein emails and all that, we found out he was selling state secrets to Epstein, either because he was compromised or, because of compromat, or because he needed the money or whatever else. So, all right, Stalker. So, yeah. And now Starmer is trying to shift the blame to the security services. Because basically Starmer's now going, "Oh, the security services didn't warn me enough. They should have vetted him further." It's like, they fucking told you, and you admitted that you knew he was fucking compromised. You hired him anyway, and now apparently it's not your fault. So Yellow, I'll go back to some of the comments in a moment. Yellow Lab says, "Listen, everybody, put up posts to make Boy Scouts for adults, like literally British adult scouts, Norwegian scouts, really obsessed with hunting, sports shooting." That sounds good, although in the UK it'd be very hard to do the hunting and sports shooting kind of bit, how they've done the laws now. Yeah, it was only in the 1990s that people could still be hung in the UK for treason. And sadly, I mean, not that I trust the government with this kind of power, but sadly we no longer have that. But I do think a lot of the traitorous politicians we've had, maybe you get less traitorous politicians if more of them got hung. I'm not making that as a direct threat of violence, by the way, just in case all the security services, I'm sure, watch my videos. But I'm just saying that in general, back in the old days, treason was still something that held the death sentence. Even when we got rid of treason in the death sentence in the 60s or whenever it was, for like murder and everything else, you could still be until the 1990s killed for, executed for treason, because it was considered the worst possible crime against the state. Yeah, Blair took it off, and it was one of Blair's friends. Makes you think, doesn't it, Rich? Makes you think. Anyway, Kevin said, "I could see them taking a clip of you holding the V for Vendetta dagger and saying you hate Starman and trying to use it against you." I could, imagine that. He wants to blow up Parliament and knife the Fingermen. I don't know what the Fingermen are called in our version of it. GCHQ. I don't know what our glowies are called, but yeah. So yeah, that would be good. Again, we used to have stuff like that, Kevin. This is the funny thing. Back before we got completely cucked in this country, they used to like the idea of people having shooting skills and stuff like that because it made people into better soldiers or better reservists. Just like at one point, legally, everybody had to train on a Sunday with a longbow because they wanted people that could be called up to be archers. I don't know, because it's some sort of slur. Can't remember if they're fingermen in the graphic novel or not. I haven't read the graphic novel in ages. Something that will probably upset a lot of people. I've read the graphic novel before, seen the film loads of times. I prefer the film to the novel. I don't dislike the graphic novel. I just think the film's aged better because the graphic is very much just about Thatcher, where I think the film kind of just works, whenever it's kind of set. But yeah, so anyway, Starmer is now desperately trying to blame everybody but himself as usual for this. And at the moment, like I said, so this latest scandal is just distracting from the previous scandal where he was persecuting British soldiers by trying to get British soldiers sent away with his lawyerish mates. So, it's like I said, Starmer can't go a fucking week, can he? Without I wonder if this is down the coast, this thing. Oh no, this is by the Isle of Wight, not the Yorkshire one, where the ROC post went over. Oh yeah, that ROC post, by the way, we were talking about on the edge of the cliff. That ROC post did eventually go over the edge of the cliff, but it stayed in one piece, which I thought was really good. I'm just going to show you that quickly before I go back to talking about Starmer. So yeah, this particular ROC post, I'm just going to see if I can direct link to these images without it breaking, that was eroding off the cliff. So I thought even then, oh, that's really impressive. It's still in one piece. It's also quite weird because it's a brick ROC post, not completely concrete. But then, let's see if I can find a picture of it after it went over. Yeah, here we go. So they don't build them like that anymore, look, because this ROC post, even after it... All right, Rajiv? Yeah. Kier Starmer's a wanker. Yeah, I agree. Look, even after that ROC post went over the edge, all the brick and everything is still fucking intact. So that nuclear bunker is still like that. Again, it's just a shame we don't build shit like that anymore in this country. Like I said, for the people who haven't been subscribed for that long, I was trying to buy an ROC post like that a while ago, but once Putin went into Ukraine, the prices of them just went silly because boomers were buying them who didn't. Because I just wanted one just as a man cave, and because housing was so expensive, to live kind of off grid, put some solar panels above it, and all that sort of shit. Because they built 1,500 of them during the Cold War because they were nuclear monitoring posts. But yeah, sadly, a lot of them are either been demolished now, really, really damaged, or or just on private land and that. But yeah. Who called you a Fed, Yellow? Oh yeah, I didn't even know that remake was a thing until it got cancelled, Rich, but it did look pretty shit when I then saw it because Ubisoft doesn't know how to make games anymore. The original Sands of Time is really good. Yeah, like I said, guys, they're only about 14 feet or so under the ground, but they do have a protection factor of over 1,000 to 1 against gamma radiation. So they are pretty damn good in terms of... But again, what these were designed for weren't long-term survival bunkers. ROC posts are basically where people would volunteer to be down there on shifts different day of the week. And then if the bombs dropped, they'd be reporting in, what the radiation levels were like on the surface, how many, kilotons of bombs exploded, stuff like that, to report into central government for them working out where fallout was drifting and stuff like that. That's cool. Are they at least the cool kind of boomers in that then, Kevin, rather than the awful kind of boomers? So Gloom Shadow said, do I think the UK can actually be fixed at this point? Looking at the numbers lately, undoubted demographic issues and bad cultural values make change by... Again, it really depends how quickly we get a good government in. I don't think this country is utterly fucked to the point that it can't be fixed yet. But every year, when you have people like Starmer in charge, it gets harder and harder to fix it. Because, they just make the country worse and worse, more in debt. Like you said, all the demographic things I don't really want to go into on this stream. But, if you want to be on about replacement of the kind of native people and the native values, I won't say more than that because, all the things that I have to be very careful about saying in the UK. But yeah, but and like I said, a lot of people, like we're saying, they don't like. Again, personally, I don't fully trust somebody like Nigel Farage or Reform to fix everything, but they're certainly one of the least bad options at this point. Muse spam. I can't look at the Muse stuff today, Rajiv, I'm afraid, because this song's mostly about Starmer. But you can link me to them on Steam, and I'll have a look when I've got time. Yeah, exactly, Mark 1. But didn't you at least hang on, I've just got a message from somebody. I'm just going to reply to it. Somebody I actually like. So he said, "I know you're live." So I think it's an important message. So I will quickly read it and reply to him. All right. If you're reading it, Andy, I've sent you a reply. Don't reply to me right now, though. But yeah, so regarding what was I going to say? Yeah, what? Sorry, I was replying to the marked one. Yeah, so because yeah, so basically the problem we have in the UK, and I'm sure like it's similar in Germany and everything else, is if you come to the country illegally and you're given like the temporary kind of residency while they process your claim and that. Yeah, a lot of those people are being given housing, you know, having their food paid for, everything like that. And it's not even to a very basic minimum level. Because here's the thing, if you're a homeless person in this country, I'm sure you would be happy even if you were put in kind of a slightly drafty bunkhouse and were given porridge. Because, you know, if the other option is living off in the streets, having people shit on you, you know, sorry, piss on you, you know, like spit at you, wondering if, you know, you were going to get attacked while you're sleeping in a sleeping bag, wonder if you even survive the night if it's cold and all that, having to beg for money. I'm sure if you're a person like that, you would much rather be put with a roof over your head, even if it's a bit shitty, and, you know, being given like free hot meals or whatever a day. Again, it's why a lot of homeless people would rather be in prison, because at least they get free hots and a cot or whatever it's called, you know. Where But what the government is doing is they're giving illegal immigrants, sometimes putting them up in hotels that would cost people like you or me £100, like, you know, $100 or so to rent per day. You know, like when these hotel rooms where they're, you know, like adjoined bathrooms, you know, double beds, air conditioning, whatever else. And then they're getting quite nice food, not even like basic food, you know, like an actual kind of buffet style breakfast, lunch, and dinner, plus all of these other legal aid things they're giving them and that. Yeah, exactly, anomaly glitch. That's what I'm sort of getting at. But yeah, the government isn't helping the people that live over here, especially war veterans that might have, you know, PTSD and then they've developed drug and alcohol problems because they didn't have the support when they left the army. Those sort of people are getting fucked over, but they're saying, oh yeah, more and more of you come in, we'll put you up. And then again, like we said, a lot of these migrants, not all of them, of course, because I don't want to be somebody that lies about all this stuff, but a lot of these migrants are then the ones that are going on to commit like rapes, attacks, you know, muggings, all this sort of stuff, sometimes even murder. Like there was the one recently, that woman that was murdered with a screwdriver by one of the like asylum seekers in the hotel that she was there to help because she was a nice, kind-hearted woman. Oh, her parents now say they are really against all this illegal immigration. They said, you know, for the sake of, you know, everything, when the trial was going through, they didn't speak up, but now it's happened. They said, you know, they wish it like their daughter wasn't as nice to all these people because, you know, they fucking murdered her. So yeah, Yellow Lab. Don't talk too much about resistance type stuff on here because it does sound a bit glowy. I'm not saying you are. I'm just saying that, you know, we're just trying to have a general conversation a bit more than that. But I'll try and get to all the comments, by the way. I'm just trying to explain my thinking between each thing properly. So if I miss your comment, repeat it again. Just don't spam really, really quickly. Just repeat them after a minute or two if I completely missed what I was saying about people. Yeah, and the interesting thing, again, like with most revolutions and all that gloom shadow, with the American Revolution, I don't think it was that many people protesting originally against the British anyway, was it? Because you had some US states that were loyalist states to the crown anyway. But again, you don't need that many people to get angry. Everybody else sits back and watches to actually make change. Yeah, isn't Plantier like the security kind of thing that does all the face recognition? I don't know too much about Plantier in all honesty. Like, I know it gets brought up a lot, but I've never really looked into them. Yeah, right. So militia one, like again, I kind of understand the argument when people say the British Army went to our country and fucked it up. That's why we want to live where you are. Those are the people I can kind of understand their argument. The problem is we get people now immigrating from all over the world that were not countries that weren't even part of the British Empire when that was a thing, let alone in the last 40 years when they say, oh, because Britain did a thing with America invading like Iraq and Afghanistan. That's why, we need to come over and you need to give us all this free shit because you bombed our country. Oh, Kevin said only 3% started the revolution and it later became 11 to 13%. Yeah, I bet you if you look at how big some of the anti-government protests over here are, you've got more than 3% of people that are on board with them. Well, in India, we built all the railway systems for them and things like that. So India was a net positive at the end by the time Britain was finished with it. That's not to say everything we did over there was nice. The British Empire did do a lot of horrible things, but as well, a lot of the time Britain left these colonial countries in a better state than they were in before the British Empire was there. Oh yeah, that's like what the Chinese guy brings up in Empire of Dust, isn't it? How the British built all the railways and then whichever country it was wasn't maintaining them. Because yeah, this is the thing is with colonialism is yes, Britain was bad in a lot of ways, and I think countries should have their own rights to do things as they want and not have a like military superpower come in and rule them. Because again, Britain's thing was we take your resources in exchange for building schools and hospitals and railways. We didn't just strip mine everything. I think that's the popular view now of people is that Britain went in, strip mined the entire country and took everyone as slaves. No, it was more that we basically took their resources and built infrastructure for them. And they didn't have a choice in it because we were militarily the most powerful country on earth until America overtook that in the sort of 20th century. But that's sort of how the empire worked. And yes, I'm not saying a lot of that is good, but what I am saying is, it wasn't like Britain made these countries from paradises into a burning dumpster fire. I don't want to get into all stuff regarding Gandhi and that, because like I said, I'm more interested in talking about Starmer and the current state of Britain at the moment. Yeah, Psychonaut, I've got a really cool mask on order at the moment. Not a really expensive one. It's one I think nearly all my viewers will be able to afford, but I don't want to say much about it until it comes, but I'm really looking forward to it. Let's say it's a very popular mask design being made in very interesting colors. I won't say more than that, but it's one of those cool things where you see like, one of the historical masks that people still make. And then like a company now is making it in really bright rubbers. And it's apparently probably because of like, industrial like safety standards that, in whatever country now they have to make them in high vis colors. But, for me, all gun tube is arse. For me, it's more if I see something I haven't got and it's a good price. But I don't really see the point in spending loads and loads of money to get slightly different variants on masks I've already got. Basically impossible, so Jedi. Again, depends where you live in the UK. My friends that live up north, the cost of living is a lot more affordable up there. But down in the south of the UK, it's fucking abysmal. As in, some of my friends work over 40 hours a week and they could not afford rent and utility bills if they moved out on their own. They would have to house share and split all the bills, even if they were working 40 hours a week, 8 or 9 hours a day, Monday to Friday. Some of my mates even work 6 days a week and can't really afford stuff. That's why I think in the UK you're seeing unemployment go up again, because a lot of people are just saying, well, if I can't, even if I work and I can't afford anything, why don't I just fucking, scrounge off the state? Especially because that state gives your tax money to, like we were saying, illegal immigrants that then go and commit crimes anyway. But yeah, so most of my friends that have moved out and have managed to stay moved out, Stoic Jedi, because a lot of my mates had to end up moving back in with their parents or relatives or whatever, because they moved out for a bit. Might have been house sharing or whatever, or, and then the cost of living kept going up and up. But yeah, my friends that can afford to it are the ones that have quite well paying jobs and they have to live up north. So the cost of living is lower. They're probably working 40 to 50 hours a week doing a job that's well above minimum wage. And even then they have to be, oh, sorry, I can't really go out for a night out, or I can't, afford to buy the newest games and things like that. What's that, Ryan? Is this supposed to be BBC counter propaganda? The BBC isn't always horribly biased. It just depends on what it is. Zoom in on the CD. What CD? There isn't a CD. What are you on about? That's a knife in my hand, not a CD. Don't buy it. Yeah, again, if I have to move out somewhere, I will move up north. I'm going up to see some of my friends up north in a couple of weeks, so I might not be streaming when I'm up there. But yeah, when I'm up north, I will like I said, it will be interesting. I'm going to visit Leeds Armoury, by the way, and definitely get some footage from Leeds Armoury when I'm up there. Oh yes, burn it to a disc. Like you're saying, I'm like Charlie about Amelia. I wouldn't mind an Amelia. I definitely wouldn't mind an Amelia, personally. I think Amelia's got the right ideas about a lot of stuff. But yeah, as I was saying, this isn't a bayonet yellow lab. This is a bayonet. That's a bayonet. That's a very big bayonet. No, this is a Renaissance, like I was saying earlier in the stream, this is just a reproduction Renaissance style parrying dagger, you know, where you'd have this in your left hand and the sword in your right, and it's for catching somebody else's sword and stabbing them in close quarters if you were doing that and getting it like that or whatever. But yeah, but like I said, I impulse bought it after watching V for Vendetta again, because V's daggers are very much like this. They're a little bit smaller, but they're this exact style of dagger, like parrying daggers. You know, sometimes called fork daggers because of that shape. But yeah, these are like the Renaissance sort of offhand weapons. You know, you could have a shield in one hand or you could have this. But like I said, I just really like the looks of it. And it's very well balanced, as you can see, because I can do that with it. That's another thing with well-made stuff like this, is the point of balance is very much exactly where the hilt is. So it's very, you know, ergonomic in your hands. I don't know. I don't know if I've ever played Soul Calibur, Rajiv. Yeah, with these, you just need to be 18 plus to buy them. They just count like any other knife. As JJ says, yeah, so with this, I had to verify I was over 18. But when they delivered it, even though they were meant to ask for ID, I think I had facial hair. The guy wasn't bothered. He just said, I need to get a photo of you signing for it or whatever. Yeah, Kevin, I don't know. But like I said, the funny thing is, if that's got a good sense of humor, they don't mind. Because like I said, it's like when I was friends with loads of people, we could do racist jokes and all that, as long as we all knew, like, none of us were doing it in like poor taste, you know, because we were actually nasty to people. It was all just a bit of a laugh. No, I haven't played Ark Raiders. It's like an extraction shooter, isn't it, or something that's really popular at the moment. But like, yeah, when I used to work at a place, I can't repeat everything they said, but like one of the black guys would say to like one of the Muslim guys we used to work with, he's like, you got your suicide vest on today, you know, and all stuff like that. And then the Muslim guy would say back to him, he goes, you going out for KFC for lunch with all your fried chicken? You know, oh, I saw a rapist in the papers looked a bit like you the other day. And again, we all did it just in funny because we all got on and it was just funny. But all the woke people say you can't do that because you can't have a laugh with people. It was never it was never being nasty. That was the thing. But to somebody like that, they wouldn't get that, would they? They'd be like, oh, we called him a black rapist. Yeah, but that was the thing. It's like none of the people actually got offended that were like the actual minority groups. This is the funny thing where I used to work. They all had really good senses of humor. It was like the fucking Karen type white people that would go, oh, I think one of the co-workers is being racist because he's... Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. Like said JJ, as long as you know it's in good faith that they're doing it just as a bit of banter and they don't really want to be horrible, I don't think most people have a problem with it. Why are you being so weird, Ryan? I'm gonna get rid of him because I don't know what his whole point was in this stream, but yeah. But no, I'm just sort of on about in general that yeah, again, it's the woke again, because there was a thing that Asman was saying about that in one of his videos that you know, he was saying prior to all the Occupy Wall Street stuff, where all this like fake left right shit and you know, like woke anti woke sort of stuff got invented. Yeah, I sent him to Room 101. Before all that got invented, Asman made a good point. He said, like, you had stuff like Tropic Thunder with Robert Downey Jr. in blackface and all that. Nobody cared. you know, nobody cared. You could do jokes like that and it was funny. And then, you know, all of a sudden, because the elites got worried about people questioning why some people have so much money and power, suddenly everything was racist, suddenly everything was sexist, you know, make the people fight among themselves so they don't look upwards. Echo, you now need to get her a little hat, one of those little paddy hats. I don't get what you mean by that much. Sorry. I don't really get. You have to rephrase that. Sorry, I don't really understand what you're saying there. Right, Stoic Jedi. Because I've got one handy, I will show it you now, just because it ended up. I don't know if it's charged. Just to warn you about that. But this is a proper 40mm hose for a NATO mask. See, it's got even a slightly offset thing, because this is in a PAPR unit. It's a West German, sorry, modern German. Again, I'm going to need to dust all this off because it's where it's been stored in a pile for ages. It's dusty. Where's the switch? There it is. And I need it on battery. Yeah, it's still working. But yeah, you'd screw a filter in there because this is the PAPR. Then you'd that's like a reverse vacuum. I suppose that bit's the vacuum, but yeah. But yeah, it's PAPR. But like I said, with something like this, you can obviously use it. Makes a weird noise when the fan spins down. But yeah, like so, yeah, with this, you'd put a 40mm filter on that. You'd have it attached to you, and then this provides air, so you don't have to spend. The C420 is a very popular model of PAPR. This is just a single filter one. But these are nice because Vietnamese mask right there. Where you're looking. I don't think I've got Vietnamese. I've got Vietnamese hat right behind me. But I've not got a Vietnamese gas mask. I've got a couple of Chinese Cold War ones, which the Viet Cong were issued with from, you know, like aid from China. I've got that. It's because I've got my hair's longer. It doesn't sit this low on my head. No, the Israeli PAPR was one somebody lent me to do some videos on and then send back to where they were. Yeah, what that thing is, that is a PAPR unit, a bit like a C420, although that German one, I think is more, I think that was the type to be issued with the wounded head, like, mask thing, where, like, you know, it was a mask that you tie around somebody's neck, and then the PAPR did, like, essentially the breathing for them, you know, for, like, wounded soldiers that might have a head injury. The rarest mask that isn't a one-off production mask is probably the US Mickey Mouse mask. That's also probably the most valuable mask in existence. The weird one Walt Disney came up with that's horrifying. But again, there's loads and loads of masks that are like one-off prototype masks that, you know, where countries sort of came up with a load of designs, physically built one or two of each of the designs before they figured out which ones they wanted to then mass produce out of that design. It does, Rajiv, but I need to, like I said, I need to adjust the liner again a bit because the problem is with this is that it's like now I've got hair. It will be better as when I shave my hair off again. That's not going to be a problem, but yeah. The problem is that the badge doesn't seem central, even though it is. I don't know why that's throwing me off. But yeah, that line is the center of it. Probably because my glasses are sort of. But yeah, the yeah. See if I do that, it does that. I know technically I could use the chin strap, couldn't I? So hang on, because that is what these are actually for on these the PIF helmets. Yeah, so I could do a chin strap with it, but again, I always like the look of that over the top like that. Rarest mask I own. I've got two Avon C7 gas masks. Have I still got one in this room? I've shown it before, the Avon C7, but I don't think it's handy in this room anymore. But the Avon C7 is like a sort of British civilian mask that they then, well, I've got an Avon one. I've got one made by another company that's not Avon. But yeah, PIF helmet, exactly, like the one on my mannequin, but that's the British Zulu type one. But yeah, the, what do you call them? Like, they were basically masks that the British government originally planned to give to civilians during the Cold War, a bit like the World War II masks. And then when they realised that the survival odds of nuclear war was so low, they recalled the masks, and most of them were recycled. So they either destroyed them, or like used them for other purposes. So, for example, there are pictures of them with like modern filters taped to them, which the nuclear industry were given. But for the most part, like I said, C7s are quite rare because most people never got issued one in the first place, and then the people that did were given money if they handed it back in afterwards. So it's quite rare to find somebody that still got them. And like the reason for that was that sometimes people probably got them, put them somewhere, forgot where they were when they were offered the money to give them back. But yeah. Yeah, I've got a Volksgas mask, but they're not rare at all. I mean, like I said, the VM37 and VM40 are not rare at all. I've got a VM44 somewhere, which is the last ditch one, which is probably the rarest. But again, that's stored in a container somewhere because it's one of those masks that deteriorates over time just because of the low quality materials it was used out of. But yeah, I wouldn't say Volks masks are particularly rare because again, they were mass produced for the German civilians in World War II. And in World War II, pretty much every nation was expecting chemical warfare to be used against civilians. And then luckily it didn't get used against civilians, other than Japan using them against the Chinese, as well as, all like the Unit 731 stuff Japan did. And obviously people being exterminated via gas during the Holocaust. But, gas in terms of like bombers dropping gas bombs on cities, thankfully didn't happen because it was like the mutually assured destruction thing of World War II. And it's especially fortunate because the Germans had nerve agents, but they didn't know everybody else didn't have nerve agents. So if it got into a chemical warfare kind of, bombing and counter bombing sort of thing, Germany would have had the upper hand in terms of how dangerous their chemical weapons were. No, the Airbus LBM looks really cool. I've got the Airbus C4, the Canadian C4. The LBM, the low burden mask, is a replacement for it, but I don't have one. But anyway, should we talk more about Kier Starmer the wanker? Because we've got 50 people on. Don't forget to like the stream, everyone. So I'm just going to have a look at some of the news articles, all the breaking news on this at the moment. So yeah, Kier Starmer is likely to be forced out of power, but he's obviously clinging on like a tick, because he's sort of like a tick, like a horrible parasitic thing, tick to the country, sucking the blood life out of the country. Yeah, the pathetic attempt to shift blame has to be the end of Starmer. And UK growth downgraded, or what a surprise, the country's in dire economic straits. But yeah, apparently quite a lot of Labour MPs are trying to backstab him now and oust him. From the BBC, Starmer apologies to Epstein victims for appointing Mandelson and believing his lies. Again, Starmer is the fucking idiot here that should be to blame because he was told by his own security services not to hire Mandelson because he was compromised. And Starmer went, I know best. I know what I'm doing. I'm a very smart man. And then, how could this have happened? The security services are to blame. Just like he blamed his son for being around Lord Ali's flat, if you remember that. PM fighting for premiership, says former aide. This is from 10 minutes ago. Kier Starmer's former political director, Luke Sullivan, says he thinks the PM is fighting for his premiership. Sullivan tells Newscast, I don't think you can underestimate how serious the situation and peril is that the Prime Minister finds himself in. Responding to the PM apology for believing Peter Mandelson's lies, Sullivan says, I suspect he'll end up quite considerably further in that. I'm not sure quite what that means, how he's structured that. But yeah, like I said, I just find it even more pathetic now that Starmer won't even take the blame for this. And he's like, oh, why didn't anyone tell me, even though they told me? I have to look up who Jonas Garastor is, whatever. Oh, I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to search thing. Jonas. I think it's because it's got a funny character in it, like with that, like it's not an umlaut, is it though? Come on. The chat's moving too fast. There's actually got people on. So that is it's the current Prime Minister of Norway. Speaking of Norway, your royal family is implicated on all the Epstein stuff, isn't it? Because Britain has got obviously Andrew, the Andrew formerly known as Prince, is implicated horribly in all the Epstein stuff. But yeah, I think your royal family's had like at least 2 people involved, hasn't it? Like, is it the Queen and a son or something, or a prince and princess? I don't know, because I haven't read into it too much. But I do like how every country on earth seems to have politicians and like royalty that are all fucking involved with Epstein. Militia One says, I can't believe the Viet Cong and NVA defeated my country. Just shows you don't need the best gear or weapons to defeat an enemy. Well, I think Militia One, the whole thing with Vietnam is like Afghanistan, is if a war becomes unpopular and you're fighting it for too long, it's literally a case of the enemy just outlasting you. Yeah, the grand old Duke of York, young girls he like to pork, his pedo friend would traffic them, then paid them not to talk. Yeah. But yeah, what I'm saying is, like, in all these countries, if a war goes on for too long, especially if it's an insurgency type war where you're just doing a police action and the war becomes less and less popular at home, it is just going to eventually cost too much money. You're going to have to pull out. And again, it doesn't matter how many Vietnamese the Americans killed, just like how many Afghans we killed over in Afghanistan. Because unless you kill everybody and actually genocide them, if you are forced to pull out and then the country just goes back to its status quo. Yeah, exactly. Like JoJo says, it doesn't, like saying that's the thing. You can win every battle and have a really good kill death ratio and whatever else. But if the war is unpopular at home and it's just costing you too much money, you can't afford in the long run, eventually you will always lose it. Exactly. Or enough of the population's against you and the other lot of the population just don't give a shit. Yeah, I do know about that, Kevin, but didn't the US say it was meant to then help South Vietnam if that got violated, and then they didn't? Yeah, exactly. But yeah, because it would cause such a fuss if you went back in. But yeah, because that's the thing. Yeah, and that's the thing. Stuff written on paper basically is worthless, isn't it? Like with the security guarantees to Ukraine about giving up their nukes so that Russia didn't invade Ukraine, and Britain and America didn't do anything to help Ukraine other than arming them. We were meant to give them security guarantees, and the Russians were meant to give them security guarantees against us, and look how that worked out. But yeah, so I'm really hoping, like I was saying, it's now the end of Starmer. So yeah, I am really hoping it is the end of Starmer, like I'm saying about this. But like I said, the problem is who replaces him then in Labour? Because like Ed Miliband is one of the people that they said it might be. And Ed Miliband is a fucking clown. Oh, interesting, Brown Street. I was saying, yeah, not like a good thing, but yeah. So that was Fall of Saigon was when they like the famous pictures of them all on the roof, wasn't it? Getting in the Hueys or whatever it was. Yeah, exactly. So they were smart in that regard. Like I said, it's very dishonourable and all that. Yeah, hopefully not Sadiq Khan. I mean, I think if I remember right, mayors can't directly run without rerunning like as a MP or something, because it's the same reason that they blocked Andy Burnham from running, so it should apply to Kier Starmer as well. Not Kier Starmer, Sadiq Khan, because I think because again, like the weird thing of both the Tories and the Labour Party is they have different rules on like their leadership contests. So that's why the Tories are really good at ousting their own prime ministers and replacing them, because their party is basically built around backstabbing and everything else. Whereas it seems Labour has a rule that's meant to make it hard to do that. But it does mean if you get somebody as shit as Starmer in power, the party will find it really hard to get rid of him. So it works out badly for them in that regard, because because it's hard for them to get rid of Starmer. It then means their party gets lower and lower in approval ratings because they can't just get rid of a shit PM. Again, I don't know how it works in America. Once a president's elected in America, is there any way for their own party to get rid of them if they don't voluntarily resign? Do they have to be impeached in a certain way or whatever? I don't know how it works in America saying that. Like, if the Republicans got fed up with Trump or the Democrats got fed up with whoever was in power, have they got any means to get rid of them? Or so it is just impeachment, yeah. Because in the UK thing, it's like they don't have to actually be impeached, even though that can happen. In the UK, it's like, their own parties can technically just have enough of their own politicians that turn against them that it's impossible for the leader to do their job. Yeah, JJ, this is the thing I'm like saying to people, that lots of people keep thinking I'm like some super far right bigot, whatever. But yeah, this is the thing I keep bringing up. I've got a lot of friends that voted for Labour, and like I said, when Kier Starmer got in, I was hoping he would do a good job, because I am not, as I said, like opposed to all socialist ideas. Especially because of how fucked the poorer people are in this country, where even if you work hard, you can't really elevate yourself out of poverty anymore because the price of living and everything is going up fast and wages. But they've just fucked it up entirely, haven't they? And that's the thing. Like I said, even my friends that are very pro-Labour are basically like, they're pro the Labour Party, but the Labour Party needs to be purged of lots and lots of people in it to turn it back into a socialist party. So Miss Koana says that there is just our entire government is corrupt. That's the issue now. It's just we the people and some federal judges and family that still serve despite their benefits being gutted. Yeah, because the interesting thing with Trump and everything is like everybody in America kept saying to the rest of the world how great the US Constitution was and all these things at protecting the American people from a president seizing too much power, because you're meant to have like 3 different branches, aren't you, or something in the US, where each is equal in power, so one can't overdo the others. But it turns out Trump is literally doing, I can't read the signs, so the rules don't matter. And then when he does something that apparently he can't do, there's not much way of stopping him. Again, I don't want to get too much into Trump versus everybody else, because I want to more talk about UK politics that affects me, because again, it's not down to me what the Americans choose as their leader and all that. But from what I understand is the American stuff turned out it didn't work as well when you actually have a president violating a lot of these rules, because they basically, retroactively you might be able to do something about them. Well, that's great, isn't it? Because if they're already fucking doing the things to you, the safeguards don't work. Yeah, again, like I said, Brown Street, you're probably a bit like us, because what happened in the UK is in the last election, there were no good options. This was the thing. And people keep going, oh, you voted for this. It's like, no, people voted for what they thought was the least worst option, and they still got shat on. Militia once said, it's always the people who want to join the military the most that can't pass is that some test for the military? But in court terms without passing it. So, but I don't know how your system works. But like I said, I know in the UK, we have the problem that they made it harder and harder and harder, even for people with no disabilities or anything, to get into the military, to the point where they now have a recruitment crisis because they made it so hard to get in, they couldn't recruit anybody, because the people that were that qualified to get in through physical fitness standards and whatever else could do like semi-professional sports roles that pay more money, where your legs aren't going to get blown off, and all that sort of stuff. And patriotic people don't want to join the military over here anymore because they don't see the government as representing, the people. Yeah, again, this is a thing, Kraken, this is a thing all across countries, and again, everywhere, because this is apparently the thing with Minnesota as well, is a common thing of a lot of politicians is give amnesty to illegal immigrants and things like that, or various types of immigrants, in the hope that they then vote for you and therefore get you easy votes. Yeah, again, JJ, one of my friends was in the Air Cadets and all that, and he wanted to join the RAF for any of the sort of proper roles, but his eyesight was too bad. But he's now a commercial pilot, so he's earning more than if he was in the RAF. So, it's that sort of funny thing. But apparently, yeah, the RAF has just a really high eyesight standard, even though you're not flying a plane full of loads of people that would die if you crushed it. Well, I suppose if you were flying something like a C-130, that might be the case. But, it's the sort of thing where he wanted to be a pilot, couldn't do it in the RAF because his eyesight wasn't good enough or something like that. But he can become a civilian pilot and fly airliners, or cargo planes or whatever else, because, the standards are different. And he is, he's got far better eyesight than me. It's just their standards have become so stupidly high because they, they didn't want to recruit many people for the army. And now it's biting them in the arse because, yeah, all of these same people are like, wow, I'm qualified enough to do this in the private sector and earn way more money. I don't know which particular person you're on about, but a lot of people that volunteered for the Foreign Legion have died simply because they're going to a proper active war zone where your life expectancy isn't good. Again, even if you've got lots of military experience, if you go to Ukraine and then an FPV drone slams into you, you're fucked either way. No amount of firefighting experience and all the stuff like that is going to save you from a fucking FPV drone. One of my granddad's oldest brother was in the Merchant Navy in World War II, doing the shipments from the US, like Lend-Lease, to Britain and to the Soviet Union. And he got sunk and survived, because luckily when they were sunk, they were closer to America on their transport ship. And then the Americans apparently used them for propaganda, because this was before America joined the war. So apparently my granddad said his oldest brother met Boris Karloff and loads of people in Hollywood to be filmed for the PR, like propaganda tapes. So yeah, they were really lucky because they got sunk near America. Like, not if they were sunk near the Soviet Union, they'd have been fucked in the Arctic, and knowing what the Russians were like. But yeah, luckily when they were sunk very close to America, so they were picked up by Americans. Yeah, the people that can lead a shot properly with a shotgun, again, you still need to know the drone's coming, because the problem with a lot of FPV drones and that is you don't know it's coming until it's too late. Because if the wind's blowing in the wrong direction, you can't hear the propeller, or same with the grenade dropping ones, you're fucked regardless. But yeah, if you can do skeet shooting, like clay pigeon shooting, it seems that people who are good at that and are given shotguns with birdshot, especially auto shotguns with birdshot, are the ones that are most likely to save you from a drone, because they can lead the drone properly and shoot it down. But yeah, that's the weird thing. You're seeing shotguns become more and more common in Ukraine, because shotguns are actually better against drones than rifles. And a lot of the time in Ukraine, the soldiers aren't even getting within rifle distance of each other before they get hit by artillery, mines, drones, whatever else. It depends again when the wind is, because I've got, like I was saying, where I've got that, I've got a DJI drone, and with my one, even sometimes when it's directly above you, you can't hear it depending on the wind direction and everything else. It's a bit like if you ever see planes do a fly past, sometimes you can't hear a plane engine if the wind is in the wrong direction because of the that's a different riot helmet, but yes, that is a riot helmet. Hang on. So that is a British riot helmet. Let me look up which one I had for the 28 days later one. That might have been the old Argus riot helmet, not Argos. Argus. Yeah, an FPV you definitely hear inside a house. What I'm saying is if you're in an open field and there's other noises like explosions going off and gunfire and, like wind noises and whatever, it's surprisingly hard to hear a drone. Right, so yeah, let me just find that video and then we'll go back to talking about Kier Starmer. Again, these bloody helmets are so much smaller than they should be because, again, this crunches both sides of my head, even though this is several centimeters bigger than the circumference of my head. If ever you buy any of the modern British riot helmets, they're like a Shum's gas mask. You need to buy them in a stupidly bigger size than your head because of, like I said, these have weird sizing. The one in that one, I think, is the Argus riot. Have a look. Oh, no, it isn't the Argus riot helmet because the visor goes down. It's not this helmet, though. I think it's the other one I have of a similar design to this one. But looking at that video, yeah, it's definitely, maybe it is this one. When did I make that video? How many years ago? Getting distracted now. I'm just quite interested in this. That video was from 2018. Maybe it was this helmet or a similar helmet. I'm not sure. No, it's not this one, is it? Because it's got a rubber band across that bit on that helmet. This has got a silver band. But yeah, it's just one of the British riot helmets. Again, I've got a few different varieties of those. Because again, like with lots of the US state things, similar thing. Britain for the police buy in from various companies. That's not like they've got one design they have to use. They generally just do a bulk order, which whatever company's doing a good price at the time. Because yeah, there's my Russian one that's actually a lot more comfortable. But what I don't like on the Russian one, as I've said before, is that the see that's a way better, more comfortable riot helmet. But what I don't like with this one is how small the visor is. So the actual helmet is way better in terms of comfort and everything, the Russian one. But the visor only goes down to there, so somebody could still break your jaw even when you're wearing the helmet. Again, it'd be difficult to, because it depends on where you're looking, but I like the visors that at least go down to about there. Some of them go down to about there, but I think, yeah, that's a good cut off your neck. But like I said, this one doesn't go down really low enough. Protects your eyes and nose. Doesn't do anything to stop your jaw getting broken. And I just burped. Probably because they probably bought them from Russia or China. Like I said, these ones, they're actually very good, comfortable helmets. They've got very good, comfortable liners in these Russian ones. Again, probably because, Russia's been, even before Putin did everything recently, Russia's always been a thing where, you know, certain protests will get you beaten up by the pigs. So, you know, they probably gave the pigs good equipment for beating up people. But anyway, should we go back to talking about Starmer? It never specifies Pepe, but he has all the riot gear. But it never states what he did before. But yeah, when he comes down the stairs in like the apartment bit, like in the tower block, he has got, yeah, like full on British riot police armor on, but they never specified that if he was police or not. I don't blame you, Yellow Lab. He's just a despicable man, isn't he? It's a bit like, again, I'm not going to say he's as bad as the actual pedos like Jeffrey Epstein, although again, we're finding out one of the rent boys is probably underage. That may or may not have, you know. But yeah, so he's not despicable in that way, but I just find him despicable in the sense that he's like everything wrong with politicians, you know, that constantly lie, constantly blame everyone else. The main thing they really like doing is gaslighting, you know, where they tell you you're in the wrong and they've done the right thing, and it's actually you that have the bad memory and can't remember stuff right. And again, it's amazing that politicians think they can get away with all this gaslighting stuff now, where you have a record of everything they've ever said on the internet. So, you know, you literally get this stuff where, you know, like Starmer might say something one week. It's in all the newspapers and everything. Yeah, exactly, gas mask Alan. That's the point. But again, we don't have enough proof on this sort of thing, so I don't want to go into it. But, you know, I personally think he's probably a wrong one. But, you know, I think that for a lot of reasons. But, yeah, like I said, Stoic Jedi, yeah, I fucking despise Starmer. Because Starmer as well, he's a fucking embarrassment to this country, as well as all the problems he does domestically. Starmer is very much like one every time he goes on a foreign trip, he embarrasses us. Actually, yeah, he was. You're right, I am. So, yeah, he's just found it. Yeah, sorry, I am. Haberman is right. He has the taxi, doesn't he? Yeah. So, yes, he's a taxi man, black cab driver. Well, again, who knows? Are they Chinese assets? Are they Russian assets? Are they Israeli assets? Who knows? I think personally they'd whore themselves out to whoever was paying the best at the time. And we know Mandelson whored himself out in the country for cheap. So, you know. Yeah, not that taxi driver. You looking at me. But yeah, so exactly. So like I was saying with the gaslighting thing Labour love doing. So Starmer will say something one week, it will be reported in all the newspapers. Later on, when that policy or whatever causes him a load of issues, he'll claim he never did that. You know, and it's like, no, we can fucking look up the archives of what you said. You know, as much as now politicians will probably start going, oh, that's AI footage, I never said that. But yeah, it's like, it's not like you have to go and find an old physical newspaper somewhere of like what a, you know, politicians said they were doing on a certain date. It's like, no, we can just look at the archives of what you've done, and you're fucking gaslighting everybody into thinking you didn't do it. Because again, the other gaslighting thing they keep doing is telling everybody how much better off they are. It's like, no, everybody I know is poorer now than they were a few years ago. You know, I don't know any of my friends that are actually earning more money than they used to, or earning more money in it, you know, in comparison to the cost of rent, the cost of food, you know, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, he's a boring dictator, Stoic Jedi, which is what makes it even worse. He's not even a charismatic, you know, dictator like the Painter or any of those. He's just a very boring, strange man that despises Britain and thinks that Britain would be better if it was a bland economic zone filled with illegal immigrants, because that's what my globalist masters want. And as long as I get my rent boys on time, I don't mind. But yeah, so anyway, I am really, really hoping this is the end of Starmer. But like I said, he is literally clinging on like a parasite, which he is. Like I said, if his own party have any balls, they need to oust him. They need to purge the Labour Party of every politician like him that aren't real socialists, that are just the same globalists we had with the Tories. And then maybe their party might have some integrity. But at the moment, you know, they are literally spineless little cucks that A fifth one, Stalker, not a fourth, a fifth. Sadly, I didn't get it from a stone. No, I'm not the rightful king of England. No, I bought this from, I think it was the Night Shop, because they don't sell guns. I can say where that is. So I think it was the nightshop.co.uk or whatever it was. And this is a windlass steelcraft Munich watch dagger or whatever it's called. So, and then I had it sharpened because nearly all the windlass stuff comes blunt by default because it's designed, you know, for reenactors. And then I had it sharpened because you can have it sharpened at the point of buying it for some extra money, like an extra £10 or whatever. So it's got a really nice edge on this that, you know. Less than £100, JJ. Let me have a look. Okay, it was with tax, like with VAT, 80 quid. So by the time you threw on the sharpening price and the next day delivery, although it took 2 days because UPS got delayed delivering it, it was just under £100, I think, like maybe £95. But it's very good for us. Like I said, windlass steelcraft stuff I really like. Some of their maces and stuff are a bit dodgy, but their swords and daggers are always really good. I'm assuming it's because the people that the blacksmiths they have make the swords and daggers are probably their most skilled ones. Yeah, it is very Renaissance. Like I said, the reason I got it is because I rewatched V for Vendetta recently. But yeah, it's very Renaissance-y style. It's like 1500s, 1600s era style dagger. I've been to Norway before. I found everything was really expensive. I know it's because the taxes are really high in Norway. But yeah, when I was in Norway, it was very much you know, a case of, oh, I don't know if it was one of the few times I've been on holiday where we didn't spend all our money and we took it back to exchange into pound sterling again. Because normally when you go on a holiday, you want to use up all your money and not pay another exchange rate fee to, you know, turn it back into pounds. Because Norway was so expensive, my dad and I were like, no, let's bring most of it back. Yeah, very shiny. The other windlass thing that is one of my most popular videos on YouTube is this fucking thing, which is really fucking heavy, but a bar mace. But yeah, this thing is fucking heavy. Grug got big stick. Again, the bar mace is very, very cool, but like I said, it's stupidly heavy. Yeah, imagine a baseball bat that weighs several kilos, and then it's got edges like this. Again, that splatter on it, where it's got rust, it's the same as some of my swords. That's where, like, I've used it against fruit and things like that. It's got splattered with, like, acidic fruit juices, and even though I've wiped them off and oiled it, some of them have still made a bit of a patina on it. So you can see this has actually been used. I imagine it'd do a similar thing if you smash somebody's head in with it, unless you gave it a really, really thorough clean straight away afterwards. You're always going to get a bit of acid etching into it. Somebody's making Nazi comments. Goodbye. Even though that was kind of funny, I'm in a country where I can get arrested for saying the wrong thing, so I don't really want people talking about beating Jews to death, which is what the person was on about with one of these. Yeah, it is. But like I said, the problem with this is just how fucking heavy it is. Most people would need 2 hands to swing it properly. So if you got a hit in with it, I think it's game over from the first hit. But the problem with it is, like I've said, is because it weighs literally so much, you need a proper swing up with it. And you know, it would wear you out very, very quickly, even if you're quite strong, because it is literally a huge, heavy metal bar. But yeah, like I said, it's got the 4-part cross section, so wherever you swing it, you're going to land it either directly on one of the angles or like that. So it's going to amplify all the force onto 1 or 2 points. I'll have to look up the weight of it. I can't remember without looking. Windlass bar mace, because I don't have a scales next to me now. So the Night Shop, where I've got the other dagger from, also sells these. They're £116 with the taxes on them. The weight is 2.1 kilos. It feels heavier than that, but maybe it's because the most of the weight is all at this end. You've got a very heavy pommel counterweight, but yeah, it's yeah, probably 2 kilos or so. It's just, it feels way, way heavier. It's not sharp. Like I said, it's like flat edges. It's like a mace, so like flanges, because it is a bar mace. So where you have like the standard medieval maces, all of, you know, you have like the lines across them, the flanges for impact force, but this entire thing is the mace. Yeah, you could. I think certain fence posts, gas mask Allen, are like the thing you'd want to go with. Yeah, like I said, bar maces. I think bar maces probably did exist, because this is one of the things where people argue, were these a real medieval weapon, or are they kind of like a fantasy weapon? But I think they probably did exist. But again, it's one of those designs. I've done a video that's coming out again, because where people keep watching the short on this, I ought to every now and again talk about it again, because again, it gets me a lot of views from people that aren't really into stuff, but they think this is cool. But yeah, because of how much iron or steel it would take to make one of these and the amount of weight, it makes a lot more sense to make like 5 halberds or like 20 spear tips for that same amount of steel. Well, it's practical. Like I said, it is practical. It's not like a stupid design that isn't going to work. The problem is, like I said, is it's very much a two-handed heavy swinging thing. I'm pretty sure that like a single hit anywhere on your body from this is going to break a limb, if not horribly, horribly bruise you. No, unless they mention on the night shop, I don't know. Again, windlass do different steels depending on what the blade type is and things. So, for example, the dagger is probably a steel that's much better for holding an edge or grinding an edge onto. Because, yeah, the dagger says it's a high carbon steel. For the bar mace, I'll link people to it just in case they're interested. Again, you can probably find this in various countries from different sites, because, again, these are all made in India, windlass steel crafts in India. But they are a very good manufacturer. Like I said, nearly everything of windlass I bought I've not disliked, other than I think the one thing I've got of windlasses I didn't like is the standard Gothic style mace, because of the fact that, like I said, that had a lot of rusting problems. And I don't know if it's because they didn't do the finish on it properly, or that because there were, you know, places where liquid could get inside it through little fractures in the metal or whatever. But that was one that, yeah, I'll pray for you, like Yellow. So, yeah, but like I said, windlass steelcraft do really, really nice things. But like I said, but it's just the only thing I've had that I didn't like of theirs was, like I said, the flanged mace, just because it had lots and lots of rusting problems. And like, you know, the ones where you could oil it straight after using it, but you'd still find it kept rusting. And I think that was, again, because of the fact that, you know, bits of the handle and everything were hollow in it, and then water would always find a way in there, and moisture, and then you'd end up, you know, getting rust from the inside out. But yeah, another windlass thing I've got, which is in the background here, is the reproduction of the US 1860 cavalry saber. Let me just knock that backwards if I can, so it doesn't get in the way. So this, again, this has got rust on the scabbard, because it's a different steel on the scabbard than the sword. And I always prioritize oiling like an actual weapon blade over the scabbard blade. This is like a laser etched one. And again, this is a practical sword. 1860 sabers I don't really like the weight and balance of personally. So as good as this actually is as a reproduction, it's still you know, it's still a 1860 saber. Yeah, it's a cavalry saber, heavy cavalry saber, designed from horseback to chop people up. Like I said, the saber I definitely prefer to this one is the British cavalry saber I've got. That's a cold steel one, but again, cold steel might outsource to windlass now anyway, people think. But yeah, this is the British style one, the cold steel one. 1796 cavalry saber. Again, I definitely prefer the weight and balance of this one. This is what's actually known as the light cavalry saber, 1796 light cavalry saber, because there's also a 1796 heavy cavalry saber. But the 1796 heavy cavalry saber is a straight blade. If you've ever watched Sharp, it's the sword Sean Bean has in Sharp, the heavy cavalry saber. The light cavalry saber is the one that's like the standard kind of cavalry sword. But yeah, this is a much nicer, you know, blade to swing around, this one, in terms of weight distribution. I think somebody did say it's because the US cavalry saber is designed only for use in horseback, not like, you know, fighting, you know, with footwork and everything like that. So the US one is completely optimized for swinging from horseback, whereas the British one is designed to work both on horseback and in sword fighting hand to hand. I'll look into them, Kevin. But yeah, again, those are the sort of things like swords that I can buy now. I'm not doing a proper job every couple of paychecks from YouTube, not even every single one. But yeah, I'm going to bookmark Atlanta Cutlery just in case they do stuff overseas. But it's always nice to look at catalogs. But yeah, I've got a video coming out again, a short on my 1860 cutlass, because although I don't really like the balance of the US 1860 saber, going off that site you just linked to, they do their own version of this, because I've got the windlass version of this. So there you go, Kevin. This is a really fucking nice sword. Because yeah, the US 1860 naval cutlass is really nicely balanced, really good blade length. Yes, a 26-inch blade. Blade. Like I said, that's actually got apparently some gold in there. My one's not got gold in it because it's just like copper. But yeah, the US 1860 cutlass is a really, really nice sword. Like I said, you've got the 1860 cutlass and you've got the 1860 saber. I don't really like the weight and balance of the saber because I'm not using it on horseback. But the cutlass is really nice in terms of how easy it is to swing around. Ah, cool, Kevin. Is it reproduction one then? Or do they also sell antiques? Because like I said, Enfield sword bayonet. Yeah, although there's a few different Enfield sword bayonets, this being a 1907. But yeah. I've got another knife sharpener coming, so I'm tempted. I'm going to use it on some very cheap knives first, see how good an edge I get on them. Because again, what I really ought to get at some point, but I've never got round to it, is getting a proper sand, like, electric sand belt. Because I've got whetstones and things and all that, which I do some of my knives with. But I know with an electric like sand belt, you can get really, really good edges on stuff. No, I don't have any German swords, I'm afraid, because they'd probably be really expensive, knowing how much German stuff costs. But yeah, so, like I said, this particular one, the Enfield 1907 bayonet, is really nice, because again, it's a short sword with proper balance for actually use by hand, and then it's got the lugs on, so you can have a really, really fucking long bayonet on your rifle. They're not with Diax Blippity, but with antique and obsolete calibers. They've added more calibers to the list than they've taken off. Because one year they removed about 4 or 5 pistol calibers from the list because they were actually being used in crimes. I guess because people could get the calibers fairly easily still, even though they were meant to be obsolete calibers. 30 USD is about 20 to 25 pounds, gas mask gallon, probably closer to 25 pounds. But the, yeah, but with the obsolete calibers, even though in one year they banned a few of the calibers that were previously allowed for some of the pistol calibers, because I think that was the year the policeman actually got killed by an obsolete caliber, where a criminal pulled one on him, and luckily they didn't ban all the obsolete caliber guns. But what they did do, though, was they actually added more obsolete calibers that you were allowed to have on the list, and they actually took off. So they probably took 4 or 5 off, but added like another 2 dozen onto the list of calibers that you could own without a license. Which surprised me because I thought they'd only ever make things worse and worse. Yeah, bayonets and swords and things like that, at the moment, you can fully own. You just can't take them out and wave them in the street. But like I said, bayonets and things aren't on the list. It's also because the chavvy kind of people that murder people don't want to spend this kind of money on a nice historical thing. They'd much rather just get a cheap kitchen knife to run somebody through with. Oh, and somebody asked about a katana earlier, didn't they? So I'll quickly show that. Again, if anybody's got any questions about Kier Starmer the wanker, yeah, I'm not a massive fan of katanas. I don't hate them, but compared to European swords, they're kind of that weird length where I'm never sure if you're meant to two-hand them or one-hand them. You know, bit too heavy and unwieldy for a one-handed sword. Doesn't have all the power of a proper European two-handed sword. You've got the little thing there, not a proper hand guard. You know, the little kind of guard on here isn't going to protect your fingers very much. But, you know, they're not awful. You know, they are still, you know, very nice for chopping. I can thrust with this fairly well because, you know, a katana isn't that curved. If I can get that back far enough so you can see the curvature of it. You know, they're not that curved katanas. So you can kind of thrust with them all right because Again, not great for thrusting, but the point does kind of go where you expect it to. That's the main problem with big sabers, is that, you know, the points are but yeah. But like I said, katanas are interesting, but I've never been much of a weeb. I actually prefer Chinese swords to katanas, like some of the dowels and that I really like. But sadly, one of the dowels I wanted to get was never in stock anywhere when I had money. Just to show people the one I like the look of. Is it the oxtail dowel? Again, this is very expensive for what it is, so I'm not planning on buying this one. But this is the kind of Chinese sword I really like the look of, the dao, because they're very similar to falchions, like very much like a falchion style blade, but you know, different handguard. I've got a dadao, which is the dao sword, but on a polearm. But again, I'd rather use my bill hook if I was going to use a polearm or a glaive. Yeah, exactly, JJ. The weird thing is, yeah, they banned ninja swords, didn't they? But not proper katanas. They basically did the thing of, you can't have the shitty katanas, you can only have the well-made ones. But that did at least mean the chavs weren't buying £10 wall hanger katanas to stab each other with, and then, you know, only people that wanted to spend like decent money on one were getting the hand-forged, proper-made ones. Yeah, John, in the UK, it has to be handmade to be legal with the katanas. There's a weird thing that basically, because at one point, all of the like chavs were stabbing each other to death with like wall hanger katanas, like mall ninja katanas they were buying really cheap. The government banned them, but at the time they didn't do a really shitty ban. What they did is they basically said, if it's stamped shitty sheet metal, it's banned. If it's a proper hand forged one using traditional methods, yeah, as JJ says, it's still allowed. So what that meant is that people that wanted to spend decent money and get the nice ones could still get them, but people that just wanted a cheap knife for stabbing people with couldn't get them anymore. You know, and then they just use kitchen knives or whatever else, or machetes. You know, and again, it's they keep finding more and more things that they want to ban or that sort of stuff. But yeah, in general, that was one of the more sensible bans because it didn't affect people that were actually into the stuff. It only affected people that were buying them for cheap to stab people. Yeah, I think it's more like manufacturers, JJ, get put on a whitelist if they're the ones that actually do it to traditional methods. And all that means is just that they don't machine stamp them from steel. They've just got a load of guys working at a forge, you know, hammering them out quickly. So again, because it's like, again, like the windlass stuff, because again, this is hand forged, but all of them are made on an absolutely massive scale, you know, where there's probably hundreds of blacksmiths employed by this one company to, you know, hammer stuff out to a very uniform standard, hence the prices. But yeah, I imagine Starmer does fear the samurai. Weapon Collector did a thing that was quite funny. I don't know if he ever did a video on it. It was the British government is afraid of the N-word because in the 80s, because of Mary Whitehouse, you know, in the video nasties and all that, the government banned loads of ninja weapons. So that's when this was before they banned katanas the first time with, you know, like where they called them ninja swords or whatever. But this was when they banned shurikens, they banned nunchucks and all those sort of things because they were worried that all the kids were going to watch the ninja Hollywood films and then go out and kill each other dressed as ninjas. And that's why Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in the UK is actually called Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles. They changed the name because it had the scary word ninja in it. Even though, like I said, ninja is no worse than anything else. But yeah, I know, Blipsy, but I'm saying with the katana one, it made sense because it was just more the fact that you couldn't buy a really cheap sword. You know, that was more the point of it, was that, you know, it was more taking the lower price stuff off the market. So people that would casually buy them to use in crime just would buy something else. You know, and again, most of them just went to kitchen knives and machetes. But I guess at one point, if you could buy a very disposable, shitty katana for like 10 to 20 pounds, that was a good price if you could just buy them somewhere to, you know, hack somebody to death with it and then just throw it in the canal. Yeah, exactly, Scruff. Like the zombie knives thing. Oh no, you've got a standard knife, but it's got some bright green on it and the word like zombie on it. Now it's suddenly a deadly murderous weapon. Because again, with the zombie knives thing, some of them were just knives that looked weird, like, you know, fluorescent knives. And again, I've got some fluorescent knives that aren't classed as zombie knives. But the reason I like those is because if you drop them and you drop them on the grass, because mine are fluorescent orange, you know, you can see them really easily, even in the dark, because they're very reflective, bright knives. They're like survival knives, you know. So they're in that bright orange color, so you can always see where they are, even if you drop them. But yeah, regarding the fucking, what do you call it? Zombie knives. Yeah, it's like, here's a load of knives that would otherwise be legal, but they've got green and a word on them, therefore they're illegal. And the other zombie knives, like the really shitty Mall Ninja ones, that will actually be less efficient at killing somebody than the kitchen knife, because they have the really stupid blades with all the weird serrations on that would make them really impractical for actually stabbing somebody. Oh, I know the ones, Kevin. I've seen the zombie ammo, yeah. I know the ones you mean, but yes, I've seen those. But yeah, I think weirdly it was more just with knives because they said it was glorifying violence or something. Ah, cool. What bayonet and what rifle, Brown Streak? Did Hornady do some of the zombie ammo? You can have a look. I know the ones you mean. They're like weird hollow points, weren't they? So it's probably just overpriced ammo. Yeah, Hornady Zombie Max. It was Hornady. I somehow remembered that. Yeah. So some of them are like regular cartridges with a green tip. And I'm assuming others are just like weird hollow points. Yeah, M9 bayonet Brown Streak is the one with the wire cutter. M7, I don't have my M7 handy, but I've got the M4 bayonet, which is basically the M7, just with a different hilt. So the M7 bayonet is basically this blade, but on a different kind of handle, but the same sort of lug and locking system. The M7 is the one for the AR-15 sort of M16. The M4 is the M1 Carbines one, but you know, so it's got the more K-bar style handle. And then the M9 is the one with the wire cutter that's heavier. Yeah, the M7 is a better bayonet. The M9 is a utility knife with bayonet lugs on it. Yeah, M7 is really, really nice. I like the M7. Like I said, I've got one somewhere. Is it over there? Hang on a second. If it's in this room, I'll go get it now before I end the stream. Remember, if somebody wants to bring up something related to the politics we were talking about earlier, bring up Kier Starmer the wanker. Yeah, this is an M7. That type of one. So, yeah, the M4 and M7 bayonets are basically the same knife on each of them. It's just obviously a different sort of scabbard handle sort of thing. Not scabbard, sorry. Yeah, different size rings for obviously the different rifles they locked onto, designed to fit over an M16's flash hider. The M9 also works on the Steyr, by the way, and the Galil. If it's 5.56 Galil, this will fit it as well and lock on. Same with a Steyr. They've got the exact same bayonet lugs and ring system. So yeah, I think the blade is an identical length on both of those. Yeah, it is. So it's literally the same blade as far as I'm aware on each of these. Pretty much identical. Yeah, I think close enough to being identical. There might be slight differences in them with a false edge and everything. But yeah, yeah, both of them have a false edge there. But yeah, just the M9 has a different M7 has a different handle. But both are nice. I kind of like the classic look of the M4 more because it looks a bit like a K-bar. I don't have the AK bayonets handy. Oh, I've got one there, but I don't know if it'll come off easy. Hang on. I've got an AK bayonet on an AK that's sitting in the corner, but the problem is I can't show them on YouTube, so I need to make sure I get the bayonet out without any rifle being in frame, or they'll give me a strike. This is a really shit AK bayonet. It's not my Romanian one that's actually all right. It's a shitty Egyptian one, I think. Yeah, so this is a really shit AK bayonet, this one. It's like the lowest standard for an AK bayonet. So, yeah, this is an Egyptian one. So you can see it's quite rusty on the handle. That's actually Cosmoline on the blade. That's not rust there. It's just where it's been in the sheath of Cosmoline in. But yeah, it's got obviously the wire cutter on it. But like I said, this is rusted horribly because it's you You got your wire cutter. But so the M9 is more like this, like an AK bayonet. But like I said, this is a really, really shit one because it's a fucking Egyptian one. With, like, no build quality whatsoever. But yeah, the Russian ones are right, the Romanian ones are right. The East German ones are almost all right, except for the fact that the East German ones, I was going to say, my first East German one was a horrible Bakelite that fell apart and became really, really like dangerous to hold because of the fact that if I can get that bayonet back on its lug, because yeah, where it's a shitty Egyptian bayonet, it doesn't want to sit on the lug very well. Yeah, I shouldn't have got that off now. It's impossible to get. Come on, you bastard. Go on the. There we go. But yeah, that's yeah, my Romanian one's my best one because again, that's very much just like a Soviet AK-74 one, same sort of plasticky brown sort of wood chip type grip. But yeah, my East German AK-M style one rather than AK-74 one, you know, like, or like the later gen one. Because yeah, the later gen one like that are like the rectangle shaped ones. The early gen ones are the more rounded handles. And yeah, the early East German I had, the handle came apart into splintery Bakelite and literally put needles of Bakelite into my hand. So I had to break the entire handle off of it because picking it up became like quite hazardous. No, I don't think Boris Johnson should come back. Boris Johnson had a lot of his own problems. He was nowhere near as bad as Kier, but Boris was the one who did the Boris wave, where he invited lots and lots and lots of very cheap immigrants in to, you know, replace jobs apparently British people didn't want to do. So, you know, drove up the price of housing, drove down the prices of wage growth. You know, there's some things I did like about Boris, but yeah, Boris did the Boris wave, which really shouldn't be forgiven. Wow, speaking of pizza, Militia One, I know from the Epstein files that apparently cutting up pizzas is very exciting, cutting up cheese pizza, and that sometimes you only have one slice of cheese pizza to go around a lot of rich and famous people. So you have to work out just how you're going to slice that one slice of cheese pizza. Not really psychonaut. Again, with things like coats, if they're cheap enough, I'll get them. But yeah, Yellow Lab, that was in all the Epstein things. I wonder what they're referring to when they're referring to pizza. Because personally, I've never been excited cutting up pizza. I found it more of a chore than anything. I did cut up some pizza earlier. That was actually all right with the little pizza roller thing. It was one that cut quite easily, but a lot of pizzas are still a fucking pain in the ass, even when you got a good roller. Pizza is probably a euphemism for something else. Yeah, well, Pizzagate is turning out to be fucking real, isn't it, from the Epstein emails? Not necessarily that the Comet ping pong thing was real, but that they used the code words of pizza to ordering in pizzas, you know. Anyway, I think the pizzas were stored in like a little jail on the private island. Probably. But yeah. And then they like baking the pizza and eating the pizza. Apparently George Bush Sr. ate a baby. But yeah. So and Epstein was friends with Mandelson, like we said in this whole thing. I'm just going to refresh the news before I go off in case there's any update on Kier getting ousted. But it looks like I said, like he's going to cling on like shit to a blanket. Trump backs Starmer's Chagos deal. Oh my fucking god, Trump! Why did you do that? If you don't know, the Chagos deal, I mentioned this the other day, is where we're giving up British territory and we're paying for the privilege. So let me have a look. How much does the Chagos deal cost? 3.4 billion. Oh, wait, no. Oh, it could be up to 34.7 billion for the entire thing. So Britain is essentially giving away land and paying for the privilege. 34.7 billion pounds. And I want to ask ChatGPT. So let's just round that up to 35 billion, okay? For 35 billion pounds, how many homeless people could the UK house and feed for how many years? Question mark. Let's ask ChatGPT. Yeah, I know. I saw a senator that was taking a piss out of Starmer, going, Starmer's got his balls on back order from Amazon. But yeah, personally, if we were to get rid of the Chagos Islands, fucking sell them to the US. Yes, let's make some money from it. Let's not give away British territory and then pay billions and billions and billions for the fucking privilege. Yeah, wonder why, Yellow Lab. Okay. Yeah, ChatGPT is just calculating this for me, assuming it gives me a proper answer. But it's going to things like the Food Foundation and Crisis. Okay. So it's going to use the average social rent of 100. Oh, hang on, it's working things out. So I was going to read out. I'll wait till it's finished doing its calculations, and we'll do the number. I might do a proper video on this about how bad a deal the Chagos deal is for the UK. Because even if you didn't give a shit about the fact they're going to be handed over to China or whatever else like that, it's just more the fact that we're paying so much money for something like that to give away something. Like, so it's like if Starmer was a car salesman and he sold you a car, but he actually paid you to take that car away from him. I am going to sell you this Ferrari, so I am going to give you £100 million to take this perfectly good Ferrari off of my hands. What a good salesman I am. Again, classified, I'm just using this as an example. But yeah, but the point I'm getting at, though, yeah, he is compromised because a lot of people, right-wing fuckery, yes, a lot of people think that one of Starmer's mates was one of the ones, wasn't he, that organised the deal with Mauritius and all the stuff in the UN about how Britain's an evil colonial power and needs to give away the Chagos. And Starmer's probably getting massive fucking kickbacks from this, I bet. So I bet it's, I give you 30 odd billion of the UK taxpayers' money. You give me a couple of billion in return. We're all rich. You know, like I said, I'm not saying he's a traitor. I'm just saying that treason should still be a hanging offence. Just saying it. Again, I'm sure I'm going on lots and lots of watch lists, but I don't fucking care at this point because, you know, it's insanity to pretend everything's working in this country. Okay, so just to read out ChatGPT, so I asked it for 35 billion because I rounded it up, how many homeless people you could feed or whatever. So it says it depends what you mean by house and feed. So here are realistic back of the envelope UK running cost scenarios using recent national averages. Inputs weekly per person. Social rent, England average £113.69 per week. That's actually quite cheap for housing, but let's assume it's really, really low quality housing. Food at home groceries per person, £32.30 a week. Sounds about right if you're not buying expensive brands and you're buying just the basic stuff you need to eat, not anything fancy. This gives a baseline housing plus food cost of £145.99 per week, which is £7,591 a year. What £35 billion buys? It means that 4.61 million people could, 4.61 million person years of housing plus food. So, for example, 35 billion could fund roughly 4.61 million people for 1 year, or 922,000 people for 5 years, or 461,000 people for 10 years. Shelter estimates that there are 382,618 people homeless in England, mostly in temporary accommodation, not just rough sleeping. At the 7,591 year baseline, 35 billion divided by 3 billion, blah, 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 about 12 years. So basically, if you got every homeless person in the UK at the moment, you took the money that we're going to give them overall for the Chagos deal, you could have every homeless person in Britain housed for 12 years and fed. How is this person working in any fucking interest of our country? And again, same with all the fucking asylum hotels bullshit. If you didn't let these people in and you didn't give them all this food and accommodation, it could go to homeless British people. I might do a video tomorrow because I did want to do another Amelia video, but I ended up just talking to the camera myself about them. Amelia breaks down the Chagos deal and how much it's screwing the British homeless people out of their money, out of, a good quality of life. How about that? Yeah, exactly, though, Kevin. But again, people of my generation have no problem with Ireland. the thing is with Ireland, again, Northern Ireland is a problem, right? Because again, I don't want to be mean to people in Northern Ireland, but it's kind of neither really most of my generation in the UK want it, nor do the people in the Republic want it, because Northern Ireland's kind of like an East Germany, where whoever inherits it has got to fix all of this fucking, problems with it. But regarding the Republic, proper Ireland, our generation doesn't have a problem with them and they don't have a problem with us because we weren't the ones oppressing them. And Ireland's got the exact same fucking problems we've got, where the Irish politicians are importing loads and loads and loads of third worlders and housing them over some sort of cultural guilt that Ireland never had for some reason, because it's not like Ireland was a colonial power. So it's like, yeah, Ireland's really fucked. They kicked the British out only to then import the third world. So it's like, poor fucking Ireland. Why did they deserve this? They didn't deserve this. But yeah, it's their politicians betrayed them as well. Yeah, you'd think that Young Britain's movement, but this is my point, is that a lot of them aren't, like, again, now and again, you will get these asylum seekers that are coming over here because they are literally persecuted and they want to do nothing but be a good thing in this country. You do get some like that. I'm not saying they're all not like that, because I have met people that have come from war-torn countries and just wanted to work hard and keep their heads down. I've never had a problem with those people. But so many of them are like the basically welfare tourists. They come to Britain because Britain gives them better benefits than lots of the other European countries, which is why they travel through all of Europe to get to France and then take a dinghy over, paying human traffickers shitloads of money. So they're not that poor, are they, if they've got an iPhone and like 10 grand to give a trafficker or whatever. And then they come over here and then all they do is whinge about how racist we are and that we're not doing enough to help them. And then they go out and, commit rapes and murders and whatever else, thefts, robberies, muggings. And then they find all the nice, bleeding heart liberal lawyers that will make human rights cases for them and whinge about how we're not nice enough to them. So now they need compensation. I don't know about North Korea. I suppose there are some North Koreans that I've heard interviews them, but we have a lot of Hong Kong Chinese, for example, that after the handover of Hong Kong, and then especially what happened in recent years with how the CCP changed all the stuff to do with Hong Kong, have come over here. And again, I kind of consider those more as actual refugees because they are fleeing to a country that had an involvement in Hong Kong because of all the colonialism and the Opium War and everything from another country. So I kind of don't mind the Hong Kong Chinese, and they're smart people and they work hard. And then they're not going, oh, give me benefit to prison. There you go, there's a racist voice. They'll throw me in prison for that. All right, see you normally glitch. I am off in a minute as well. I've been on nearly 2 hours again, but that is another thing. They bring in drugs and guns because there's more and more guns turning up in the UK, like actual real guns, not the converted blank firers and all that shit, but the actual submachine guns, actual proper pistols and all that sort of stuff. Again, coming over on boats, drugs coming over on the boats. Exactly, Notcher. And again, like we were saying, and the amount of money it costs, you could have every homeless person currently in the UK housed and fed for 12 years. Breaking down the numbers. So again, why is our government doing that? I know it's because they're spineless, traitorous cunts. I know that, but I'm just saying that, if I was a politician and I had all these options, I would just say, let's sort our country out first before we worry about anything else. Let's get the standard of living good all around the country for everyone. Everybody, can afford some sort of housing. Yeah, again, I think one of the first things I'd do if I was in power would be first to massively invest in nuclear. We'd start, while all the nuclear stuff was being built, we'd completely exploit the North Sea because we own a load of it for, all the oil and gas. So we'd have money coming in and like cheap electricity and gas because of that. We'd be harvesting the North Sea for all that. We'd build nuclear because nuclear is actually good and works long term. And then, we'd be doing massive house building programs, even if they're not great quality houses, like, say, commie-style tenement blocks, but at least then everybody has a roof over their head. Yeah, stop the NIMBYs. Yes, very good, comrade. Face the wall. Yeah, I live in a very NIMBY area, and the NIMBYs are very strange here, because there's some stuff they oppose that would actually be good for our area and other stuff they allow through. So in our area, they're building a load more housing in certain areas that would be good. But that housing already doesn't have a maximum price attached to it. What, HS2? Probably. again, if I wanted to build railway, it would just get fucking built if I was a dictator. You know, I'd just have everybody laying down the fucking tracks, and I wouldn't care if there was an endangered bat or something near the track. It would just get fucking built. And it wouldn't be, oh no, there's leaves on the line, sir. Sorry, we can't do it. It'd be get back to fucking work. But yeah, regarding the NIMBYs, so in my area, they're planning on building a load of housing. They're building it on a fucking floodplain. So this housing is going to have not working drainage. There's already a load of drainage problems in my area anyway. But they're building houses on a floodplain where I bet somebody got kickbacks for it because it all went through. It's not going to have a maximum price on it. So I bet you it won't be regular English people or whatever buying the houses. It's going to be various, you know, like foreign investors buying them and then renting them out or not doing anything with them. Because one of the other affordable housing things near me, all the housing went up to over £1 million per like little studio flat really quickly because all the foreign investors bought it out to rent it. So the NIMBYs aren't opposed to this, or they're letting it through. All right, D&8. So the NIMBYs letting all this through, but they're opposed to a football stadium being built in our area with like a new cinema and loads of like shops and that, you know, people could get jobs in. And, you know, so we've actually got stuff in our local area, like a cinema, because we don't have one. So the NIMBYs are opposed to actual things that people could go to and spend their money in, but they're pro housing being built that British people can't afford on a floodplain that's going to flood. Yeah, they're building too much, but that's a better problem. I know some of it's the tofu dreg housing, but yeah, I'd rather have a scenario where the government builds too many houses than too little houses. Yeah, and again, classified official, can you blame it? If you're a smart person in the UK and a foreign country offers your citizens like much better wages to move elsewhere, where you're probably less likely to get murdered than that. Yeah, we're even getting a problem. All right, Dave, we were talking about Ireland just now, funnily enough. Don't worry, I was being nice to Ireland. I was wondering why your own politicians were betraying you like ours are. But yeah, but regarding what was I? So yeah, brain drain. It's like how everybody from Poland who immigrated from here from Poland are now moving back to Poland because Poland is a much nicer country, you know, of actual prospects. And now, you know, the Romanians are doing the same thing. The Romanians are looking at Britain and going, it's a bit shit compared to Romania, which, you know, does say something, doesn't it, about the fucking standards of this place, where old ex-communist dictatorship countries are, you know, in a better state than we are. Yeah, it's the tofu dreg housing, as they call it. It's basically the same problem we had in places in Britain in the 50s and 60s, where building companies weren't regulated to use proper materials. So they basically filled the walls and cavities with junk materials like newspaper and trash. And then obviously the buildings are very flammable or have high collapse risk. So basically, as long as your governments, you know, actually have good regulations on what you can and can't use in housing, it wouldn't be a problem. But yeah, I think China's problem is for ages there wasn't any of these regulations. So obviously the housing companies use the cheapest possible shit materials for building the like insulation and all the load bearing structures because they weren't, you know, they were making the maximum profits doing that. Oh yeah, but your base, it's like that your politicians are basing on you. And what I was saying, Dave, earlier in the stream is it's like, so I can kind of understand, although I don't agree with it, why all the bleeding hearts over here say, look at Britain's horrible colonial past. Therefore, you need to help all these poor countries now. But like I said, so Ireland was essentially occupied by Britain up until like the early 1900s, whenever the Easter Rebellion was, and Michael Collins and everything. So you were under our jackboot until then. And then your politicians are gone, oh no, we've got all this colonial guilt. We need to bring them in. It's like, why? Ireland didn't do any of this shit. You're victims to all the colonial era. But no, your politicians don't think so. Yeah, this is my point. But yeah, but all of the people are acting the exact same way. That, you know, because obviously with Britain they say, you know, obviously it's because we ruin lots of these countries, so therefore, you know, again, that is an argument. I don't know how well it stands up, because I'd argue again, speaking about Ireland, stuff like the potato famine and everything else, Britain did worse things to Ireland than we probably did to bits of Africa. But again, it's just the fucking gall of these politicians and that. But yeah, I will be off in a minute, by the way. But yeah, so Starmer is, like I said, still hanging on like a parasitic tick. I'm hoping his party coups him. Like I said, if any of his own Labour MPs had any integrity, they'd coup the bastard because, you know, nobody likes him, and Labour would actually be, you know, a much better prospect for regular people to vote for if they were a genuine, still like old Labour, a socialist party. Because again, even if you don't like socialists, I want the Socialist Party to have socialist values, not, oh yes, we will do all these things to get in power, and then suddenly go, oh wait, no, actually, we're just going to fuck over all the poor people as usual and give all your money to mega corporations. I agree, Begon, but I still completely despise Starmer. Starmer, I think, is like the worst example of a politician because he's basically like a weak, boring dictator, which is why I hate him so much. Because if you had a dictator, you'd hope you'd at least have a charismatic strongman type one that at least has something going for him. But no, Starmer has the authoritarian bent and all that, but he just hates the country and he's fucking boring and he's a laughing stock around the world. Yeah, like when he went to China, he was fucking pathetic. Again, when I hear foreigners bring up Starmer, they always don't think he's our prime minister, or they think he's like, yeah, a wet towel, whatever. Yeah. Well, I can't say I agree with that, Kevin, but those would be banned in the UK. I couldn't possibly use a Magnum. Maybe you could use a potato peeler. Because again, his wife is Jewish, but he doesn't really help Israel, does he? This is the funny thing, because Starmer kept making all this fuss about not having anti-Semitism in the Labour Party, and now there's all this anti-Semitism in the Labour Party and all the stuff with the Muslims calling for deaths as Jews and stuff like that. Starmer's very quiet because he doesn't want to lose his voter base. Because again, Starmer's wife, like most people think, is a beard. She's like, you know, a sham marriage sort of thing where he's probably a closet gay. And, you know, his wife is simply there to give up appearances. Maybe his kids aren't his kids. I don't know. And like I said, I wouldn't have a problem if he was gay, if he was just open and honest about it. But with all this weird stuff with Ukrainian twinks, it's very, very strange. So, yeah, this is my point. Like, who likes this guy? So, like, you know, the people who don't like Israel don't like him anyway because they think he's too pro-Israel. And the Jews don't like him because they think he's, you know, not doing enough to protect them. So, yeah, my father was a tool maker, and he certainly made the best tool around. He made me. Again, I don't want to go too much into Israel in this stream because, again, I've got Israeli viewers, I've got Arab viewers, I've got people on both sides. You know, I don't really care. Like I said, when it keeps coming up to all the Israel-Palestine shit, I keep, you know, thinking that, you know, my personal opinion is I don't really give a shit about the Middle East. It's not my problem. Regarding Ukraine, as I keep saying, even if you're not a fan of Ukraine, Russia definitely started the war. And the problem is that if Russia isn't beaten enough in Ukraine that they can't start a war anytime soon, if they do attack a NATO country, then it's our soldiers dying, and it's going to cost us a hell of a lot more than giving Ukraine surplus equipment. But again, the whole Russia-Ukraine thing is, like we said, turned into a complete slog where, you know, thousands of people die per month on each side and no ground is really changing hands. Like I said, the whole Ukraine thing is horrible in the terms of like how many human lives it costs. But like I said, neither side is really winning, like I'm saying, because Ukraine is going to struggle to take back any of its land Russia has taken. But Russia now is going at its slowest rate of advance yet for the most human casualties, because they have basically no good military equipment left, and they're just sending Mobics with rifles into minefields and drones and machine guns to try and slowly take land. But, you know, Putin doesn't give a shit about his own people, does he? Because he's a fucking oligarch with shitloads of money that, you know, would kill every Russian if he could for more money and power. So again, like I said, it's one of these cases like with the Russia-Ukraine thing that, you know, I think everybody that's a sensible human being can agree it's shit for both Russia and Ukrainians. But, you know, anyway, I will be off in a minute, but yeah, so Kier Starmer, like we said, sadly, I mean, we talked about a load of things on this thing, and like I said, you lot have seen a V for Vendetta style dagger now, because that's, like I said, rewatched that the other day, and I really like V for Vendetta. Yeah, so, oh yeah, you can at least for this, because it hasn't got like a hook for your belt, because it's one of those ones that's designed to work with webbing. Where's my fucking epaulet thing? Yeah, there you go. You can actually shove it through there at least and have it Oh, it's in my zipper pocket there as well, which I didn't. Yeah, you can have it sort of sat for your epaulette to draw out like that. But yeah, regarding like everything with our government, like I was saying, yeah, I think it's when, not if now, Starmer is forced out. It's just I hope for the sake of some of the Labour MPs they do it sooner rather than later. But again, who would replace him? Red Ed Miliband? Or no, not really cavalry dagger. It's a sparring type dagger, a parrying dagger, you know, like a Renaissance era one, where you'd have this in your left hand and the sword in your right hand. And you'd use this as a sword trap, you know, where you'd have a sword in one hand, this in the other, just to demonstrate. Again, I've not really got enough room here to fully demonstrate this, but let me see if I can show you what I mean. So, get out the cavalry saber, have this in my left hand. So, you'd kind of have this in your left hand as a guarding one, and then obviously you'd be mainly attacking with this and doing the footwork using this. But then this would also be a trap you could keep against your body to try and block the sword if it comes in from another angle. And then, yeah, if you ended up getting in too close quarters where you couldn't swing or thrust with your main sword properly, you just give them a quick jab with this. So, yeah, that's obviously, like I said, what they were for. They're parrying daggers. Like, they're used instead of a shield. Personally, I would rather have a shield if it was me, because I'd feel more confident blocking with a big surface mass of a shield. But I really like daggers like this. I think they're cool. And, yeah, they're obviously designed for, like I said, sort of... I'm trying to think, Kevin, if we've got anything like that. Again, like I said, he's already been delaying and cancelling elections, so it really wouldn't surprise me with Starmer if he fucking tried the thing of there's a pandemic, there's some sort of civil disobedience, therefore I need to delay the next lot of elections and I can't leave. And then, you know, try and stay in power that way, because I wouldn't put it past him. Again, I think he's the sort of person that wouldn't care how many people he gets killed in this country if he gets to stay in power and siphon off enough money of the country into his own bank accounts. In my opinion, as I keep saying, I don't know any of this stuff factually about the man, but that's just how I feel about him. I think he's, you know, taking money from the country and, you know, siphoning it off through his friends and that, like lots of politicians do. It's just he's fucking us over harder than lots of the previous politicians, which I thought was quite hard. Yeah, again, this is the funny thing. Because he doesn't have enough stormtroopers, he wouldn't be able to deploy the army to keep order. Because, again, if the army is mostly made up out of working class people, you know, in the regular ranks, it would end up like fucking Romania in 89 or whenever it was. You go and shoot your family members to keep me in power. They turn their guns on the government. So, again, I think that's why they probably want loads of police and not actual military that would follow his orders more directly. So yeah, I don't think he could rely on the army. This is the thing, especially after he did all the fucking betrayal of the army recently with the you know, like I said, the prosecution of British soldiers of in Iraq and Afghanistan. You know, he had ambulance chasing lawyer friends, try and find as many British soldiers as they could to get the most spurious of claims against, so he could try and just drag them through the courts. So after he's done that and all this has come out about him, I don't think the army should have any loyalty to him at all. I mean, I think the best case scenario for this country, but I don't think Charles will do it, I think he's too pussy to do it, is if the king actually said, you know, which they can technically do in the thing, that the king declared that the government is no longer fit for power and, you know, essentially did martial law that way. Because at this point, I'd rather live under the fucking royals than I would the current political lot, but, you know. Maybe when William comes in after Charles dies, maybe William will be a bit more based. I don't know. I know William hated Andrew a lot longer for the whole thing, so I trust William more. But yeah, again, I don't actually know enough about that, Scrap, but I know, like, obviously the English Civil War happened because of the whole thing between Parliament and the King with Charles I, but and Cromwell. But again, I don't know really about the logistics of it. But I know there is technically a thing where they can do something like that. I don't know all the stuff to do with it, and it would cause a constitutional crisis. Oh, has Apple given up on their thing? Because again, a lot of these companies, I think if the government pressures them enough, they will sell everyone out because they want all the money coming from the UK market. I don't know, Scruff. I know What was I going to say? At some point after 1812, 1815 sort of time, Wellington was prime minister, because like I said before, that's where he was known as the Iron Duke or whatever, or the Iron Prime Minister, not because of his fortitude at Waterloo, because he had iron shutters on his house because everybody threw shit at his house because he was so unpopular. But I don't actually know the last time which of our politicians. Again, my A-level history for my English bit of the history, which I didn't do very well in, was all about British parliaments and all that in the 17 and 1800s, and it was fucking boring. I can remember names like Pitt the Younger or whatever it was, and Gladstone, and obviously Robert Peel was the one that set up the police originally, the Peelers. But in general, I can't remember any 19th century UK politicians because I don't give a shit. The two bits of the course we did was British history and Stalin. The Stalin bit I aced because it's interesting, the Soviet Union and, you know, the mass murder of like 40 million people by a murderous dictator. He's at least interesting, Stalin. But the British stuff was just fucking boring, to be honest. Yeah, the speaking dagger, exactly. I just love how well balanced it is because you can do that in your hand and it, you know, stays in your hand. Because again, a good balanced sword is great. Again, I wonder where the point of balance is on the saber. It's going to be further forwards. Yeah, about there on the saber. About there. Yeah, about there on the saber. So obviously further forward onto the blade, but with the dagger, it's at the hilt. Most conventional swords are where the hilt is, or a little bit further forwards. But yeah, so anyway, there you go. There's the two blades, and again, I will be off in a minute. But yeah, compared to the katana, you can see how much of a curve's on this one. If I do that, or that, yeah, that's a good way of showing the curvature of that. Very, very curved, this sword. But again, I can't thrust with this very well, but it's a very nice sword for swinging around and chopping. It is very responsive in the hand, the 1796 saber. But yeah, anyway, I will be off. Thank you for coming on, everybody. We've spent 2 hours kind of talking a little bit about Kier Starmer, but also just knives and swords in general. And I'm sure the stormtroopers right now are on their way to get me for all of my heretical thoughts towards this government and politicians. But to quote V for Vendetta, people shouldn't be afraid of their governments. Government should be afraid of their people, because that would be a much nicer world to live in, where the people in charge are held to account. But yeah, lamest dystopia ever. Yeah, at least in a lot of the dystopian media, Britain's an interesting dystopia. We don't have the cool fashy uniforms. We don't have a powerful army. You know, we don't have any of this or a good anthem. That's all right. Anyway, have a good evening, everybody. I'll be on. I'm hoping to be on tomorrow for a stream, but I'll try and if I get time tomorrow, do that Pathways video I wanted to do. So we'll do Pathways. I'll do a thing about Amelia talking with that Pathways narrator voice about the cost of the Chagos deal, which of Kier Starmer's friends were implemented in the deal, and what that money could have been used for in Britain. For, like, you know, housing homeless people and that sort of thing. Because, yeah, it does really make you think when it's put into perspective that for 12 years, instead of giving away the Chagos Islands, if we just kept hold of them, we could house and feed all the homeless people that are currently in this country. And then if we sold them to America, we'd get a net positive from it. But no, we're giving them away and paying for the privilege so they can be given to China and hostile nations to the UK. What a fucking brilliant negotiator Starmer is. Like I said, he probably is a brilliant negotiator because one of his friends has been implicated in the deal and he's probably getting billions of pounds of kickbacks from it. So when he's ousted from power, he can run off like a Nazi to Argentina or somewhere and hide up with all of his ill-gotten gains. That's my personal opinion. And like I said, it's just my opinion. But yeah. Yeah, I have got a brilliant deal for you, Ukraine, just for classified official. We'll give you to Russia. You'll have to pay to be given to Russia. All of your women and children will be sold into sex slavery in Russia. All of your men will be conscripted into the next Mobic wave that will be used against Estonia. Only I could have come up with such a brilliant deal because I am truly a good negotiator. Right, yeah. I'll see everybody, you know, see everyone maybe tomorrow for a stream. I'll definitely try and get that Pathways video done tomorrow and then just stick it live as soon as I've finished it. Amelia talks about the Chagos deal or whatever, because that's a more interesting one than the one I just did today about Epstein and all that. But yeah, anyway, later, Skater. Yeah, have a good day, everybody. And I'm streaming via the PC, so I need to end the stream via the PC. So I need to click there. Right, see you all. Have a good day.